Hello, and welcome to my presentation on my educational philosophy after educational psychology. The first topic I'd like to talk about is memory. I definitely learned a lot about memory in this course, and I feel like understanding the brain is very important, and I feel like I should have known more about this before I went about teaching students. Learning about long-term memory and short-term memory and cognitive load really has helped me reflect on what I am doing and how I am impacting students. I definitely will take some of the strategies away and present them to some of my colleagues and give them ideas for cognitive load strategies and things that will help students. I use visual cues a lot, and now will be more intentional about what those visual cues are, because oftentimes it's just I think I'm being funny, and I think sometimes I'm confusing students more than helping them. So I'll definitely be more cognitively aware of the visual cues I'm picking out for students. As far as metacognition goes, I have always known about metacognition and thinking about thinking, and I've always found it very interesting. But I was not aware that it was for all learners. That I thought it was something that teachers talked about, and that was it. And I now know that it's very important for students to think about what they're thinking about and why they're doing what they're doing, because that gives them the motivation to continue. I think that keeping the students informed about what you're doing is just as important as you knowing what you're doing, because if the students don't know what's coming next, obviously some surprises are great, but giving them the chance to understand your thought process will help them learn how to be metacognitive, and that's, I think, the main goal here. It's not to know specific facts or dates, but to create lifelong learners that want to continue to learn. And so giving them giving them strategies while you're working will give them the chance to be metacognitive. Motivation, I think that now, after going through this course, that choice-based learning is a huge motivator, and I'm not teetering on whether it's good or bad now. I have great self-efficacy as a teacher, and now I feel like I'm more empowered than ever, and I know now that it's important for me to display that to my students and not just think that in my head, but to tell them that they can work and they can do things, and there is no limit to the things that they can create in my classroom. I definitely use technology as a motivator. When I do use technology, I preface it with almost like an extrinsic motivation, which I don't think is bad, because there isn't a whole lot of technology going around in the building, and most of the time when I'm trying something with technology, it's for the first time. It could blow up in my face, so I use technology as a motivator. Today, we're going to get out our phones and we're going to use this application, and I really hope that you respect me enough to use it correctly. And so I try to use technology and choice-based learning a little bit. I throw in their face, I'm letting you choose what you want to do. I'm not forcing you to do anything. So please, do it well and choose to do it. So I'm working a little bit with motivation, and now that I know a little bit more about it, I feel like I'll be able to experiment a little more and find out what's working and what's not. I think motivation and beliefs about self really tie in together. If I'm modeling my positive behavior, my students will not be able to come in with a bad attitude, and they'll have their days, but giving them positive feedback about their artwork and telling them that everyone can draw. It's just a matter of practicing that. Whether or not they can actually draw is not the issue. It's letting them believe in themselves, and I definitely see this on a daily basis. So letting them know that control is in them, that behavior, learning, all of it, it's all controlled by them. So if they don't want to learn, that's up to them. I mean, but you give them the tools, and you're the teacher, and you guide them, and if they choose not to, you can try hundreds of different things to help them, but I believe very strongly that it's their choice, whether or not they want to learn or whether or not they want to behave. And I tell them that, and I think that allows them to stop and think about what they're doing and why they're doing it, and then it also builds a good rapport with students. Constructivism is definitely a large part of my classroom. Students are constructing things, they're constructing artwork, they're constructing their thoughts on things and pieces of art. And so things that I took from the class that I want to get better at is definitely the planning part of their projects and the reflection part. I think that it's the most important part, and it's the biggest part that I struggle with, giving the students time to think about what they want to do and why, and making those actions intentional, and then reflect afterwards, reflecting on it. What went well? What went bad? Why did you choose to do that? If I don't give them that reflection time, really they're just playing and making art and not thinking about it. And so I think that it's null and void then. And then interactions, student modeling. The student modeling I think is interesting to see. I wish I could show all of you, but when they're in the choice-based classroom, they're all working on their own things. So I oftentimes tell students who don't have something to do to walk around, go see what someone else is doing. And so they'll watch someone else and they'll say, oh, I really want to do what they're doing. And so then they go over and they sit next to them, and then the other student teaches them what they're doing. So student modeling is definitely just a natural part of the choice-based classroom. And then I have done this, but I would really like to do this more, which is a gallery walk where students put out their artwork and everyone goes around and looks at artwork, and then either writes a question or a positive feedback to a student, and puts it next to their artwork. So then the student can go back to their work and see what other people think about it, and not just have their own narrow-minded view about their own artwork. As far as assessment goes, at the beginning I said that this is my struggle. I find it very difficult to assess artwork. I find it very personal, and you can't really go and say that someone isn't good or they are good, and that's a lot of what art is, which is your skills, how good, how well you applied a technique. And so all of my assessment is formative. It's walking around, it's talking with students, it's finding out what they think, and that's how I know if they've learned or not. Their motivation, I think, is a lot of my assessment, whether or not they want to do something and work during class time. I actually am having a lot of struggle with is summative art, is a summative assessment possible in art, especially in the choice-based classroom, because everyone is doing something different. Everyone is choosing their own path and they're finding their own way. So I find it very difficult to see how I could come up with an assessment that hits everything that I want it to. And with our switch to standards reference grading, we are required to have a district summative assessment for art, and I'm kind of battling against it quite a bit. And I can see that it's important, but I think if it's going to detract from student learning, and it's really just because it's something we have to do. I don't think that we should create something because someone tells us we have to. I think we should create something because we want to, and we want to see what the students are learning. And so I think it'll be a journey this year, not fighting against it, but I definitely want a better reason as to why I need to summatively assess my students in art. So that's where that is. And then the course impact, I went into this going, holy cow, this is way over my head. I don't know a lot of these terms, and I'm feeling uncomfortable, to now when I'm reading and I'm thinking, I'm reflecting, and I'm thinking about the whole time thinking about my impact on student learning. I didn't realize that I was impacting students so much, even down to what's coming out of my mouth, as to what visual cue I'm displaying, and I learned a lot about how the brain works. And I think that, once again, that's a very big foundation, as to my job is to ignite the brain, and if I don't understand how it works, then there's no way that I could be possibly doing it effectively. And so I very much appreciate learning about the brain. And then self-efficacy, knowing that me going to work every day with a positive attitude is positively affecting my students, and I can see that. And I can certainly see the opposite. I can see teachers that come in and they either don't know what they're doing, or they don't feel confident, or the other one is teachers who aren't there to teach students. They're there because it's their job and that's what they do. I love learning about the impact of that. And so I definitely am leaving this course with a positive note. I feel like I'm going the right direction. This book only assured me, and it is helping guide me, that I am making good choices for my students, and I think that they would agree.